We go live to Cuba. Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi arrives in the Caribbean island on an official visit to strengthen bonds of cooperation and friendship. We're watching live images from the International Jose Marti Airport in Havana, capital of the Caribbean island of Cuba. Arrive with the Iranian president on board. Cuba is going to be the Persian president's final stop on his first Latin American tour since he took office in August 2021. These are live images that we are receiving from the International Airport Jose Marti in Cuba's capital. The president is coming from Nicaragua, where he was just a few hours ago, where he announced, together with his counterpart, his Nicaraguan counterpart, the signing of important bilateral agreements in different sectors to boost cooperation and trade between both countries. A Latin American tour with one clear objective, that is to strengthen trade, commercial, and cooperation in general in different fields between the nations of the region, with a first stop in Venezuela, a second in Nicaragua, and a last stop in this first Latin American tour here in Havana. The plane is taxiing the runway at the international airport, where the president, the Iranian president, will be received by authorities of the Cuban government. Raisi begins an official visit to Cuba, the first since taking office in August 2021. This comes in the framework of the Latin American tour that saw him visit first Venezuela and then Nicaragua. The visit is a sign of the excellent state of political diplomatic relations between the two countries, as well as the willingness of both governments, referring to Cuba and Iran, to raise economic and trade relations to a higher level. Cuba and the Islamic Republic of Iran re-established diplomatic relations on August 8, 1979, and the island became one of the first to recognize the new republic that was born after the triumph of the Islamic Revolution. This year, 2023, marks the 44th anniversary of the relations between the two countries, which have been strengthened over time. And with this official visit that begins today, the path forward is very clear: more cooperation and more integration between the peoples of the world to better face the challenges that humanity faces today. Both countries, Iran and Cuba, have very similar routes, and Iran sees Cuba as a strategic partner in the Latin American region. Both have had a strong political relationship and also have the prospect of increasing economic relations in various sectors, including biotechnology, an example of which is the cooperation in vaccines between the two countries, cooperation that saw its highest point when a vaccine production plant was opened in Iran, and it became one of the first to produce the Cuban COVID-19 vaccine called Soberana. We're seeing the images how the plane slowly reaches the stairs, from which the Iranian president will come down and make it official, the beginning of his visit to the island to work for further cooperation It is an important visit that we are witnessing today. This comes in the framework, as we have been explaining in the past couple of days, of the presidents of Iran's first Latin American tour. In Venezuela, where he made the first stop, both heads of states, President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, signed 25 agreements, and there are still some that are being worked on. Communications, culture, transportation, mining, ports, petrochemical and gas, among others, are the sectors in which these agreements were signed. Both heads of states announced that the current commercial exchange between both nations is $3 billion, but with the new agreements that they signed, they plan to increase it in the medium term to $10 billion and even later in the long term to $20 billion. Also, as we saw here in teleSUR, in the screen of teleSUR English, hours ago, the President of Iran was in Nicaragua with his counterpart, Daniel Ortega, and they also announced important bilateral agreements. In the closing ceremony of President Raisi's official visit, both heads of states announced the agreements reached, which enhance cooperation in different fields between both nations. The first is the creation of the Joint Intergovernmental Commission for Economic and Commercial Cooperation and Scientific and Technological Exchange between Nicaragua and Iran. This Intergovernmental Commission is planned to hold a meeting in Tehran. A date is yet to be defined. The second Memorandum of Understanding deals with the powers of the Supreme Court of Justice of both countries, while the third addresses issues related to medicine and medical, laboratory and pharmaceutical supplies between the Ministries of Health of both nations. All of this is of course for the benefit of the development of both countries through free trade agreements. In President Ortega's speech at the closing ceremony, the head of state announced the establishment of a roadmap to eventually reach a free trade agreement between both nations, and Ortega also said that the foundation was being set to increase cooperation and reach even more agreements in the future. For his part, the Persian head of state said that with the agreements that were signed, both nations, Nicaragua and Iran, raised the level of exchanges and cooperation, saying that Iran is ready to share, not only with Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela, with anyone that so wishes, all the developments and advancements that they have made, despite the many unilateral coercive sanctions imposed against these countries, against Iran, but Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba also faces these same sanctions, and of course the consequences which are borne mainly by their people, which are the ones that suffer the most from these illegal actions. The plane is getting ready for the official arrival of the Iranian president. We are seeing in the images all the protocolar military standing fast to receive the Iranian president, the red carpet, and everything is ready as soon as the plane gets in line with the stairs so that the president can come down and be welcomed by the authorities of the Caribbean island to thus give an official beginning to President Ebrahim Raisi's visit to the island, which the central point is enhancing cooperation and bringing the ties of both peoples closer together. This visit is a sign of the excellent state of political diplomatic relations between the two countries, as well as the willingness of both governments to raise economic and trade relations to a higher level. Cuba and the Islamic Republic of Iran re-established diplomatic relations on August 8, 1979. And the island became one of the first countries to recognize the new republic that was born after the triumph of the Islamic Revolution. This year, both nations are celebrating the 44th anniversary of the relations between them. They both have very similar routes, and Iran sees Cuba as a strategic partner in the Latin American region. Both have strong political relationship and also have the prospect of increasing economic relations in various sectors, including biotechnology, an example of which is the cooperation in vaccines between the countries. And both governments maintain that sanctions, blockades, and embargoes do not work They only make people suffer and create greater tensions. In the long history of relations since 1979, different sessions have been held, intergovernmental committees of Cuba and Iran. The 18th session was the latest that was held on May 15, 2022 in Tehran. And in this session of the Cuba-Iran Intergovernmental Commission, members gave continuity to the agreements reached at the 17th session, which was held in Havana in 2019, and to develop, of course, relations between the two countries in a comprehensive manner. Doors of the plane are open, and the President of Iran is about to step up at any moment now. The members of aviation, they are checking that everything is in order, and the President should be exiting the plane anytime now. People that we have seen on top of the stairs, probably security, very likely security, that are checking that everything is in order. We are seeing some authorities stepping down of the plane as we wait for President Ebrahim Raisi to appear. These are live images that we're getting from Jose Marti International Airport here in the capital of Cuba, in Havana. Well, we were talking about the 18th session of the Cuba-Iran Intergovernmental Committee. Back then, the parties met. As we wait for, we can continue talking about a brief history while we wait the Iranian president step out of the plane. Back then, the parties met in 3 commissions: trade, energy, and health. And the purpose was to agree on documents and projects that were signed at the end of the meeting. Some 20 technical committees in different areas such as trade, investment, transit and transportation, electricity and energy, oil and gas, customs, banking and finance, as well as health, were included in the agenda of the dialogue. Back then, Cuba and Iran signed 13 agreements for exchanges in pharmaceutical, agriculture, customs, food, industry, and vaccine production. Within the framework of the 18th session of the Cuba-Iran Intergovernmental Commission, the Pasto Corona vaccine production plant was inaugurated as a result of the transfer of the Soberana vaccine technology from the Finland Vaccine Institute to that production plant, which was one of the first plants abroad to produce the Cuban's vaccines, which yielded great results in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. So another example of cooperation and how broadly countries can help each other in difficult times during the time of the pandemic. President Iran should be stepping out of the plane any time now, where he will be welcomed by the Cuban delegation as the Persian head of state begins his official visit to the Caribbean island. Let's see movement. Let's see if we have a closer. Other people stepping down the plane. So we wait for the president to appear. Probably some authorities from the delegations of the Iranian president that were stepping down the plane. Remember that this comes in the context of the Iranian president's first Latin American tour. Seeing some movement at the top of the stairs. Let's see if it is the president. And there we have the image. The president of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, is coming down the stairs as he officially begins his official visit to the Caribbean island. The President of Iran is stepping on Cuban soil and he is officially in Cuba territory to begin an important visit to strengthen cooperation and bilateral agreements with the Caribbean island. Cuba and Iran have had long relationships since the Islamic Revolution. We are seeing the images. The President of Iran was received by Cuban Foreign Affairs Minister Bruno Rodriguez, and he's giving the formal official welcome to the island, presenting different Cuban authorities that are here at the international airport Jose Marti to receive the Persian head of state as he begins this important official working visit to strengthen the ties of friendship and brotherhood between both nations. This visit of the President of Iran is a sign of the excellent state of political diplomatic relations between the two countries, as well as the willingness of both governments to raise economic and trade relations to a higher level. What we're seeing here is the customary activity the military is giving the world on how the current situation is, and is welcoming the head of state, saying that everything is ready for it to begin. Cuba and Iran have a long history of cooperation and friendship. Both re-established diplomatic relations back in August 8, 1979, and Cuba was one of the first countries to recognize the new republic that was born after the triumph of the Islamic Revolution. Cuba and Iran are celebrating this year, 2023, the 44th anniversary of the relations between the two countries. 44 years of cooperation and of policy of mutual benefit for the well-being of both peoples. These are the live images that we're getting from the international airport of the welcoming of the Persian head of state to Cuba. And they are entering the airport in the special hall where these were the live images right in the international airport as President Ebrahim Raisi begins the official visit to Cuba. An important visit that marks the friendship and long history of cooperation that both nations have. In this visit, the President of Iran is going to hold also a meeting with his counterpart, Miguel Diaz-Canel, where it is very likely that more agreements and memorandum of understanding will be signed to foster the cooperation between both peoples and to better face the challenges of today's world and to face the unilateral sanctions and find ways to neutralize them so that the people of both nations can continue to develop and enhance their way of life. We are watching live the images of the arrival of the Persian head of state to Cuba as he begins an official visit as part of his first Latin American tour that saw him first arrive in Caracas, then in Managua in Nicaragua, and now he's going to complete his first Latin American tour here in Havana, where he will meet the Cuban head of state, Miguel Diaz-Canel, and both nations will continue to strengthen the ties of friendships that they have held for over 40 years now. Stay tuned with teleSUR English for more updates in upcoming news briefs.